Hello, my name is Charles. I'm a senior at UC Berkeley. Thank you for tuning in as we discuss one of the only areas in San Francisco that has remained true to its roots by avoiding large-scale gentrification found in nearly all other areas. That's right, we're talking about the Tenderloin area. It's often a common occurrence to typecast this 50 square block Tenderloin area as a drug-reckoning concrete jungle for homeless and the LGBT community. However, as we discuss this unique area, your perception may take a U-turn, perhaps prompting a visit. But first, we'll give you a brief history of the Tenderloin, and then we'll explore the area through the lens of some UC Berkeley students who had the opportunity to experience the Tenderloin with the Faithful Fools. The Faithful Fools is a nonprofit organization facilitating housing and opportunities for the Tenderloin community. Now, my classmate Isabel will give us a brief history.
The Tenderloin neighborhood is a section of downtown that is bordered by Geary Street to the north, Market Street to the south, Mason Street to the east, and Van Ness Avenue to the west. The neighborhood was initially an entertainment district filled with jazz and nightclubs, brothels, theaters, restaurants, gambling parlors, and hotels. It was also home to San Francisco's first gay bars, clubs, and organizations. This neighborhood was welcoming to all, regardless of race, religion, sexuality, and sexual orientation. Also, after Vietnam, the Tenderloin's low-income housing provided new safe spaces for immigrants from Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. The Tenderloin went through a radical change in the middle of the 20th century after the movie industry collapsed and caused the neighborhood to lose most of its income and economic value. Police began cracking down on the quasi-legal businesses, and establishments started closing left and right as the street configuration was changed and cable cars were removed. The main way to maintain income became through crime and drugs. But the neighborhood's consistent saving grace has been the community's commitment to low-income housing and providing safe spaces. Currently, single-room occupancy hotels, nonprofit land acquisition aimed at keeping rents low, and zoning policies to prevent high-rise buildings protect the neighborhood from gentrification and save the heart of the Tenderloin. The Tenderloin district has maintained its vibrancy and cultural significance against all odds.
The Faithful Fools have lived and become an impactful part of the Tenderloin for many years. Founded by Carmen Barsity and Kay Jorgensen, the Faithful Fools have grown into the community of the Tenderloin, and they are advocates for those who are silenced and ostracized, educators to those who aren't yet aware of the Tenderloin's great community, and are community builders for those around them. Now we'll hear a few of the Fools answer our questions. How has the Tenderloin changed your life?
Well, so I would say 40-something years ago, I was here as a homeless youth. I had grown up in a white middle-class family, in a white segregated community. I had grown up, though, in a family that was very politically and progressively engaged, being anti-war, for racial justice, all those kinds of things. But through a lot of circumstances, I was separated from my family and ended up really living in poverty. So when I was about 20 years old or so, I ended up here in the Tenderloin with my car to live in and very few resources and kind of at a loss. And there were very kind people who taught me how to move my car at 3 a.m. so I wouldn't get towed and wouldn't lose my car, and, all of those kinds of things. And certainly there was a drug life and there was a lot of craziness. And I was lucky to have a car because that is shelter and it is a kind of protection. But there was one woman that I got to know, a black woman, very thin and, to my mind, hugely old, right? So now that I know a lot more about being on the streets, I know that she was probably in her mid 40s, maybe her early 40s, maybe even a little bit younger. But, life on the streets takes decades off of your life. One day she approached me and she said, you've got to get out of the Tenderloin. You've got something better in store. You just talk too good to be stuck here. And she gave me $5. Now, this was 40 years ago, so gas was like a bucket and a quarter a gallon kind of thing. And there was enough to put enough gas in my car so that I could go back to the community where I was going to college. And I went back to school, did the couch surfing thing, stayed in other people's dorm rooms, did what I had to do to get back into school. And it wasn't easy, and it took a lot to, find enough money to be able to pay all the things that I needed to pay. But that $5 from somebody who I don't think could afford $5, I'm pretty sure she was living on the streets and perhaps selling things that she might not have wanted to sell in order to stay afloat herself. But, she changed the trajectory of my life, and that was here in the Tenderloin 40 years ago. So the Tenderloin, offered me a home and then offered me a path and taught me a lot about what we owe one another, right?
Hi, my name is Carmen Barsodi, and I'm co-founder, co-director of Faithful Fools in San Francisco, and it's grand to be here.
So my first question is, what are some ways people who haven't immersed themselves in Faithful Fools carry out their mission?
Well, I think a very primary mission of Faithful Fools is to live and act in direct relationship with people, and not just with ideas we have of what people need. So the idea of the street retreat is inviting us to come down and engage in the neighborhood and in the conversation with people, and to listen, and to also out of that listening is the reading we share at the street retreat. When we listen, then we have to act. And when we don't listen, we can't act with compassion. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, it's simply inviting people to care. Mm-hmm. To care about what's happening to people, to care about how it is that many people struggle, mm-hmm. whether with housing, whether with food, whether with isolation or addiction. It's simply caring, mm-hmm. and doing whatever we can wherever we are. And that's a simple piece. Is like with Faithful Fools, even just in our name, fool is that not placing ourselves higher or lower than another, but as we say in our mission statement, discover our common humanity, to act out of our common humanity. And the faithfulness is really just a fidelity to the people, the fidelity to the struggle with people. So that's in my thoughts right now. But our mission, too, we were founded as an educational and charitable organization. Mm-hmm. So I think, too, walking and working, acting, always with a sense of learning. Mm-hmm. That I like to say, we don't do things wrong, we're just always learning. And so as we go along, to pay attention, what am I learning about an individual? What am I learning about myself? What am I learning about what's needed for somebody or with a larger social struggle that's going on? So to live and work out of a place of curiosity and wanting to learn, mm-hmm. And very simply, by being Faithful Fools Street Ministry, is keeping our feet on the streets.
My name's Linda Chrisman, and I am one of the full-time Fools staff at the Faithful Fools. And I do a little bit of everything, but most specifically, I bring my understanding of trauma and trauma-informed care.
How has your time with the Tenderloin and with the Faithful Fools informed your perspective on trauma and healing?
In a couple of different ways. So at the Faithful Fools, we don't provide service per se. We actually accompany people. We have conversations with people. We become part of someone's life if they want. So instead of just seeing someone in my office for a few hours and listening about trauma and helping them work with that, I'm going into people's rooms. I'm seeing where they live. I'm experiencing where they live. And as I walk on the streets of the Tenderloin, I feel my own activation in my own body, if there's danger or if there's too much sound or stimulation. So it really gives me a not only strong understanding, but sense of compassion for the environment that people live in and the constant challenges of finding some way to feel stable and safe in an environment that is changing constantly. And I also see how the bureaucracy that we have set up in regards to poverty really works both to keep people impoverished, but also to keep their lives unstable. And that is triggering in itself. That reactivates those old traumas. So whether it's the massive amount of paperwork that they have to fill out and don't have records for, or the fact that someone can't have more than a certain amount of money, so if they work, then they either have to hide that money or they can't make enough, they can't then save that money to be able to move out of the Tenderloin. There are just so many environmental factors that are stacked against a person that then contributes to this sense of instability. And from that sense of instability, people literally can't find their feet, literally can't figure out a way out. And so if there are any mental health issues, if there's any trauma in the background, then that just comes up to the forefront, and it's a vicious circle.
Hi, I'm Selena. I am one of the co-directors at the Faithful Fools Street Level Learning Program, and I've been on the team for about 6 months and affiliated with the Faithful Fools for over 10 years.
All right, thank you, Selena. I'd like to know, in the Fools mission statement, you talk about discovering our common humanity out on the streets. I'd like to know where you see that reflected in the Tenderloin and how you find that in the community.
I see connecting to our common humanity as just pulling back the layers. I often use the reference of an onion. There are parts of our lives that no real person will ever know unless they really invest the time, energy, and commitment to create that level of intimacy. But I don't think we are all called to have like really intense and intimate relationships, but we are required to treat people with decency, to treat them with dignity and respect. And so common humanity for me are similar to basic needs: housing, food, shelter, and safety. The same is true for when we talk about common humanity. Is I shouldn't look at you as a person who abused substances, or someone who's a battered survivor, or a child without a house, or a person struggling with your physical or mental disabilities. I should see you as a person, and then I should try to figure out how and in which capacity we are connected and bound or share similarities. And I think that in addition to finding those things, we should celebrate them and not hold any kind of resentment or judgment around our differences. So common humanity for me is really aligning oneself physically, emotionally, spiritually, physiologically, and truly at a level of at a human level that will allow for change to go forth in the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to ask a quick follow-up question that I think ties into that. Just what do you think anchors you personally in the Tenderloin? What motivates you to keep doing this work and stay with this community?
I'm anchored based on my life experiences. I am a formerly homeless person. I identify as a woman of color. I'm the queen of the universe, and I think that I'm entitled to be heard. I think my story is just as worthy and relevant as someone who's a transplant here from a tech company who is white. And oftentimes we lose power, we lose decision-making and problem-solving resources due to a certain population or audience having that authority and that power. And so I stay anchored in wanting to be and will continue to be an advocate and decision maker in this community.
Yeah. Can I ask one more question? Go for it. What do you see for the future of the broader Tenderloin community, but also the Faithful Fools as an organization? And what do you see your role as in that future?
Well, the Fools are what I like to call fluid. We're always evolving. We meet people where they are and really embody the true definition of equity. I would say the future of the Fools is unbeknownst to all of us, but I do believe that it means more people celebrating themselves, more people having access to resources and really feeling a sense of love and community by being affiliated with us. And I want to be able to say I'll be a forever fool because the Fools came into my life, and Kate Jorgensen, the co-founder with Carmen, they came into my life at a time when it was really, really toxic and there were unforeseeable outcomes, and they helped me realign and reconnect with what I know. At the time, I didn't recognize my own worth, but they helped me figure out that. And so I'll forever be grateful and a part of the Fools community.
Hi, my name is Hai. I discovered I was a fool in 2014. Left the Tenderloin in 2019, and it is wonderful to be back to visit with the Fools in UC Berkeley this week.
Hi, I know that you're from Buffalo City, New York, and I'm just wondering why have you chosen Tenderloin as a place to come and to volunteer with the homeless situations?
Thank you. Yes, I've lived in Buffalo, New York for the last 2.5 years, and before that spent a decade in San Francisco, and the last 5 years of that in the Tenderloin with the Faithful Fools. And the Tenderloin is a special place like no others. The sights, the smells are so powerful. The community, the sense of purpose is so powerful right here. I'm here to reconnect with friends, to reconnect with the Faithful Fools and others here in this neighborhood, and to find greater motivation for my work back in Buffalo.
After visiting the Tenderloin and having an incredible experience, each group member decided to record a quick reflection to encapsulate our emotions and thoughts.
Hi, I'm Anjali, and I'm a third year. Before our time in the Tenderloin, I almost felt a sense of apprehension, a hesitation to enter this community that wasn't my own, and a fear that an immersive experience like this would do more for me than for the community. I was quickly relieved to find these worries were unfounded. If anything, I've learned from our week in the Tenderloin how truly effective an immersive learning experience is compared to one of solely acts of service or charity. Getting to know residents, hearing their stories, engaging in acts of community, from morning Tai Chi at Bodecker Park to attending Glide Memorial Service to sharing a meal at St. Anthony's. Forming those connections and building community is essential to any form of substantial social change. I've learned that to create our vision for a better future, we must first recognize our own judgments and meet people where they are, so that we can, in the wise words of the Fools, discover our common humanity. The learning that we've done and the growth and experiences I've gained through my time in the Tenderloin will continue to shape how I move forward with my future work in organizing and social change, as well as even the way I move through life, and I'm beyond grateful to have had this opportunity.
Hi, I'm Ashley, and I'm a first year. Reflecting upon our amazing trip, I was fully immersed in the community of the Tenderloin and even felt welcomed with open arms. Before coming on this trip, many asked me, but why would you want to go to the Tenderloin? And to that, I now say, because why would I not want to be surrounded by such a friendly community? From this experience, I will carry with me my ability to spread compassion of the houseless and my new knowledge of the Tenderloin to others. The Tenderloin isn't quite like any other community. It's a melting pot full of life, which can be seen from the children playing in the parks, to the elderly's table tennis rallies, to the gatherers along the sidewalks. Experiencing the Tenderloin through the Faithful Fools has been a true blessing, and I could not have asked for a better way to experience and learn about the Tenderloin.
Hi, my name is Jacob. I am an international student from London, England. 2 years ago, I traveled to San Francisco as a tourist. Having stumbled across Tenderloin by accident, I was forever fascinated by this place. After my trip, I knew I was destined to return to this place. My fascination of Tenderloin has begun out of both curiosity and fear, as my first experience in Tenderloin was seeing a homeless person pouring a jar of milk over his head. Now I have returned to Tenderloin as an exchange student at UC Berkeley. I am truly grateful for the Faithful Fools for providing me this opportunity to fully immerse into this neighborhood. My previous thoughts and myths related to Tenderloin were all shattered as I have seen a different side of the neighborhood and the community. In Tenderloin Museum, there was this quote that says, "A city without Tenderloin isn't a city at all." After this week-long alternative break, I can now say that I have begun to understand and appreciate this quote. I will now carry on with my life with this valuable experience and start to see the world in a different way.
Hi, my name is Cynthia Roldan, and I am a third-year transfer. Before coming into the Tenderloin, I'll admit I did have a negative perception based on what my friend told me. By the end of our trip, however, not only was I humbled by my false beliefs, but I am inspired by the work of the Faithful Fools. Selena, Carmen, Sam, Leah, Linda, all of these wonderful people opened their hearts to show us the power behind communal healing and advocacy. By showing us the importance of individual connections, they exemplified how we can make a difference in a person's life. Even when they were running Faithful Fools, they always made sure to check in with us. I am so grateful I was able to experience this with everyone in the group because I honestly believe they all contributed to this amazing adventure. As we repeatedly read the Faithful Fools mission statement throughout the week, I was reminded of how a single act of empathy can be so life-affirming to someone. I have learned to appreciate the community around me, and I am more passionate about what I want to do in my life. So I can only close this out by saying thank you to the Faithful Fools and the Tenderloin community for teaching me how to be a better social worker and person overall.
Hello, my name is Rachel Georgian, and I'm a first-year business major. Like most people, when I moved to California, I was extensively warned to never enter the Tenderloin. I looked it up and I found the headlines that scared me deeply. However, when I got the opportunity to be a break leader for this trip, I was curious to better understand the Fools' work and learn more about this community. Over the course of the spring semester, we started a course on our campus, and our group set out to learn more about the Tenderloin. We started off by learning about the transgender history, about housing options such as SROs, delving deeper into concepts such as paternalism and solidarity, and even into how race and gender affects our daily lives, and so much more. So when we entered the Tenderloin, we were coming into the community with a lot of information. However, when we combined the classroom learning with the experiential learning component, we were able to learn so much more about the Tenderloin that we could never learn in the books. Honestly, I learned that the Tenderloin is a bustling community with life, love, humanity, and community like no other. The conversations and relationships that I built during my week in the Tenderloin will carry on with me for the rest of my life. While on the trip, I started asking questions like, how can I support others? And how can I adapt as a leader? This past year, working with the Fools, from the curriculum planning for our course to the immersion trip, has completely changed the way that I approach social justice and will shape me into a more conscious and thoughtful leader going forward. I'm so grateful and thankful for the opportunity to work with Berkeley's Alt Breaks program and the Faithful Fools for an experience that I will truly never forget.
Hi, my name is Emily and I'm a first year. There's truly only so much one can learn from a textbook or a news article. Even as someone who entered this trip into the Tenderloin with a fair amount of practical knowledge, nothing could have prepared me for how deep the roots of the community run in this neighborhood. It is quite honestly unlike anything I've ever experienced. So quickly, I felt welcomed and embraced by the community, whether that be a simple hello, good morning on the sidewalk, playing with kids at the playground, or attending a service at Glide Memorial Church. Going into the trip, I was so worried that an immersion would would be selfish, that I would be using the community without giving anything in return. That could not be further from the truth. By getting to know the Tenderloin and its residents, I understand myself and my place in the world better, yes, but I was able to understand the neighborhood and these issues of poverty, gentrification, and homelessness in a more intimate way. I'm so grateful to the Faithful Fools for taking us in and providing such a calm, safe environment for us to learn and grow. This was such a transformative experience, so absolutely stay with me and equip me for future community work. There's more to the Tenderloin beyond its headlines and the judgment of others. If you could take one thing away from this podcast, we'd like our listeners to know that creating change in our own lives can start as small as a simple conversation. Through the Faithful Fools mission, we learned the empowerment of forming connections through individual interactions and the roles that interactions play in the building community.